There is a wall going up in northern China, big enough to be seen from space. Not a wall of stone this time, but a wall of glass. It runs for 400 kilometers along the edge of a desert, 5 kilometers deep in places, made of millions of solar panels turned to face the sun. From orbit, it resembles a strip of dark blue sea unrolled across the sand. The satellites that pass overhead have tracked it, growing month by month, swallowing dune after dune. China calls it the Solar Great Wall, and the official story is that it is here to make electricity. That part is true, but it is not the real reason this thing exists. This wall is not just built to catch the sun, it is built to stop a desert from eating the country alive. Most coverage of this project shows the same thing. A drone gliding over endless blue panels, a caption about clean energy, maybe a number with a lot of zeros. Impressive for a few seconds, then forgotten. What almost nobody explains is what is happening underneath those panels. Because something is growing down there in the sand that has no business growing in one of the driest places on Earth. We will get to the part where this wall of glass quietly turns dead desert back into living ground. But first, you need to understand why China would pour this much steel and silicon into the middle of nowhere. Because the reason has very little to do with your electricity bill, and a lot to do with a war the country has been losing for decades. China has a sand problem, a big one. Across the north of the country sit some of the harshest deserts on the planet, the Kubuki, the Tengger, the Badain Jaran, and further west, the Taklamakan, a place so hostile its name is often translated as the Sea of Death. And these deserts do not sit still. For decades, they have been spreading, with wind pushing sand across farmland, burying roads and choking cities. Every spring, dust storms lift that sand into the sky and drop it on Beijing. For a country trying to feed over 1 billion people, losing usable land to advancing dunes is not an inconvenience. It is a slow-motion emergency. At the same time, China has a second problem stacked on top of the first. It burns more coal than the rest of the world combined. Its cities choke on the smog, and it has promised the planet it will bend that curve. It needs staggering amounts of clean power, and it needs it fast. So someone asked a simple question. What if you could solve both problems with the same object? What if the thing that generates the clean power is also the thing that stops the desert from moving? That question is what this wall of glass is the answer to. Here's where the story stops being about solar panels and starts being about something stranger. In the Kubuki Desert, China is assembling a belt of panels designed to stretch around 400 kilometers long and up to 5 kilometers wide, a continuous blue barrier laid straight across the sand. When it is finished, around 2030, the plan is for it to generate roughly 100 gigawatts of power, much of it sent hundreds of kilometers east to light up Beijing. 100 gigawatts. To put that in human terms, that is on the order of 100 large nuclear reactors worth of capacity, built not on a tidy patch of land but smeared across a desert in a line long enough to pick out from the moon's neighborhood. But the panels are doing a second job the brochures barely mention. Rows of them act like a fence. They break the wind that drives the dunes. They throw shade onto sand that used to bake at brutal temperatures. They cut the speed of the air at ground level so the sand stops traveling. The wall does not just sit on the desert, it pins it down. This is not a power station that happens to be in a desert. It is a desert-killing machine that happens to produce electricity. And the way it does that second job is genuinely clever. When you raise a panel a couple of meters off the ground and line up millions of them, you change the climate underneath. The shade slows evaporation, so what little moisture there is lingers instead of vanishing. The panels block the relentless sun that used to kill anything trying to take root, and the wind, broken up by row after row, can no longer pick up and carry the sand. So China started planting in that sheltered strip. Tough, low crops, things like licorice, a hardy plant that pulls nitrogen out of the air and feeds it back into dead soil, slowly making the ground fertile again. Grasses for grazing, shrubs to lock the surface in place. The panels generate power on top while life takes hold underneath, and each one helps the other survive. There's even a maintenance twist. Solar panels in a dusty desert lose efficiency as grit settles on the glass, but greenery beneath them cuts down the blowing dust, which keeps the panels cleaner, which keeps them generating. It feeds back on itself. Then there's the hardest engineering problem of all, getting the power out. 100 gigawatts in an empty desert is useless if the cities are 1,000 kilometers away. So China strings the whole thing onto ultra-high voltage transmission lines, some of the longest and highest capacity power cables on Earth, capable of shifting gigawatts across the width of a continent while losing only a sliver along the way. Without those lines, the solar Great Wall would be a monument to nothing. If the scale of this is starting to bend your brain, do me a favor and hit subscribe. I go this deep on a different mega project every week, and drop one word in the comments: a wall of glass 400 kilometers long, built to choke a desert and power a capital city at the same time. Genius or overreach? Be honest, because as staggering as this is, it hasn't come for free. The parts that never make the highlight reels deserve a mention, because a project this size, in terrain this hostile, carries a cost. Start with the water. Greening a desert and keeping millions of panels clean takes water, and water is the one thing these regions have least of. Critics ask the obvious question: are you really healing the land? Or are you borrowing from an aquifer that won't refill in our lifetimes? Get that balance wrong, and the fix becomes a new kind of damage. Then there's the dirty secret bolted onto the clean dream. The sun doesn't shine at night, and the wind doesn't always blow. So to keep that power steady, China still leans on coal plants running in the background as backup. A wall of clean panels propped up, at least for now, by the very thing it was supposed to replace. The transition is real, but it's far from spotless. And there is the politics of the land itself. Much of this construction happens in China's vast, thinly populated West, regions with their own peoples, their own histories, and long-running tensions over who really benefits when Beijing moves in with megaprojects. Is this development that lifts a poor region, or another way of binding the periphery tighter to the center? Depending on where you stand, the same blue wall looks very different. But step back, and the wall says something bigger than its own controversy. Across much of the Western world, building clean energy at scale turns into a decade-long saga. Permits, lawsuits, local objections, projects shrunk or quietly cancelled. A single solar farm can spend years tangled in process. Meanwhile, China is rolling a wall of glass 400 kilometers long across a desert, wiring it into the longest power lines on the planet, and treating the whole thing as a problem to be solved rather than a debate to be had. That difference is not really about engineering talent. The panels themselves follow the same physics everywhere. It is about will, money, and a willingness to push straight through obstacles that other systems treat as reasons to stop. You can admire that, or you can be unsettled by it. Often the honest answer is both, because the same determination that builds a wall to tame a desert is the determination that does not slow down for whatever or whoever happens to be standing on that land. so is the Solar Great Wall a glimpse of the future, proof that we can power a civilization and heal a dying landscape with the same act if we simply refuse to accept the word impossible? Or is it a warning about what gets steamrolled when a project becomes unstoppable? Maybe it's both at once. Maybe that's exactly what makes it worth watching. The wall isn't finished yet, but when it is, a strip of the deadliest sand in China will be generating power for a city 800 kilometers away, with grass growing in its shade and dunes that were supposed to bury the country held frozen in place. The desert that was meant to win will have lost. If this changed how you think about what is actually being built in the world right now, hit subscribe and stick around. There is a new one every week. Like the video, send it to someone who will not believe it is real, and tell me in the comments, future or warning. I read every single one.